while in the midst of those who hate. To dwell free from hating is happiness indeed. While in the midst of those who are troubled, to dwell free from trouble is happiness indeed. While in the midst of those who are greedy, to dwell free from greed is happiness indeed. We dwell happily, free from anxiety, like radiant beings in celestial realms. We rejoice in delight. Victory leads to hatred for the defeated sufferer. The peaceful live happily, beyond victory and defeat. There is no fire like lust, no distress like hatred, no pain like the burden of attachment, no joy like the peace of liberation. Hunger is the greatest affliction, conditionality the greatest source of despair. The wise, seeing this as it is, realize liberation, the greatest joy. A healthy mind is the greatest gain. Contentment is the greatest wealth. Trustworthiness is the best of kin. Unconditional freedom is the highest bliss. Tasting the flavour of solitude and the nectar of peace, those who drink the joy that is the essence of reality abide free from fear of evil. It is always a pleasure not to have to encounter fools. It is always good to see noble beings, and a delight to live with them. Tedious is the company of fools, always painful, like being surrounded by enemies, but to associate with the wise is like being at home. You should follow the ways of those who are steadfast, discerning, pure and aware, just as the moon follows the path of the stars. There are those who pursue that which should be avoided, and avoid that which should be pursued. Caught up in the senses, they lose their way, and later envy those who know the truth. To lose the company of those with whom one feels at home is painful. To be associated with those whom you dislike is even worse. So do not abandon yourselves, either to the company of those with whom you feel at home, or those whom you dislike. Beware of the attachment that springs from fondness, for separation from those one holds dear is painful, while if you take sides, neither for nor against fondness, there will be no ties that bind. From endearment springs grief, from endearment springs fear of loss. Yet, if one is free from endearment, there is no grief, so how could there be any fear? Becoming lost in attachment brings sorrow. Becoming lost in attachment brings fear. Being free from attachment means sorrow ceases, so how could there be any fear? Becoming lost in pleasures brings sorrow. Becoming lost in pleasures brings fear. Being free in your experience of pleasures means sorrow ceases, so how could there be any fear? Becoming lost in lust brings sorrow. Becoming lost in lust brings fear. Not being lost in lust means sorrow ceases, so how could there be any fear? Becoming lost in craving brings sorrow. Becoming lost in craving brings fear. Being free from craving means sorrow ceases, so how could there be any fear? Naturally held dear are those who live with right action and have found the way, and through insight have become established in truth. Those who long for the undefinable, with hearts filled with inspiration, whose minds are freed from sensual longing, are called those bound for freedom. Just as family and friends joyfully welcome home loved ones returned from afar, so their own good deeds welcome those who have done them, as they go from this life to the next. Relinquish anger, let go of conceit, release yourself from all that binds you. The pure-hearted who cling neither to body nor mind do not fall prey to suffering. I say that those who contain anger, as a charioteer controls a speeding chariot, are fully in charge of their lives. Others are merely keeping their hands on the reins. Transform anger with kindness, and badness with that which is good, meanness with generosity, and deceit with integrity. These three ways lead to the heavens: asserting the truth, not yielding to anger, and giving, even if you have only a little to share. Awakened ones do not cause harm. They are rightly restrained, and they move to changelessness, where they grieve no more. All pollution is cleared from the minds of those who are always vigilant, training themselves day and night, and whose lives are fully intent upon liberation. Since ancient times, it has been the case that those who speak too much are criticized, as are those who speak too little, and those who don't speak at all. Everyone in this world is criticized. There never was, nor will there be, nor is there now, anybody who is only blamed or wholly praised. Those who live impeccably, who are discerning, intelligent, and virtuous, they are continually praised by the wise. Who would cast blame on those who in their being are like gold? Even the gods praise them. Beware of clumsy movement, and be aware in your bodily conduct. Renounce all devious action, and cultivate that which is wholesome. Beware of contrived utterance, and be aware in all that you say. Renounce all cunning speech, and cultivate that which is wholesome. Beware of devious thinking, and be aware of all that you dwell upon. Renounce all unruly thought, and cultivate that which is wholesome. Ably self-restrained are the wise, in action, in thought, and in speech. Resembling a withered leaf, you have the messenger of death at your side. Although a long journey lies ahead, you have still made no provision. Hasten to cultivate wisdom. Make an island for yourself, freed from stain and defilement. You will enter noble being. It is time for you to come into the presence of the Lord of Death. There is no time for rest on this journey, yet what provision have you made? Hasten to cultivate wisdom. Make an island for yourself. Freed from stain and defilement, you are released from birth and death. Gradually, gradually, a moment at a time, the wise remove their impurities, as a goldsmith removes the dross. As iron is destroyed by the rust it produces, so those who perform evil are corroded by their own action. Lack of study leads to forgetting the teachings. Neglect spoils the home. Laziness leads to loss of beauty. Heedlessness ruins attention. Sexual misconduct diminishes those who perform it. Stinginess diminishes those who could give. Acts that diminish their doer are stains indeed. But the worst stain of all is ignorance. Be purified of this, and you are free. Life is apparently easy for one who lacks shame, who is as impudent as a crow, who is arrogant, aggressive, intrusive, and corrupt. Life is not easy for those who have a sense of shame, who are modest, pure-minded and detached, morally upright and reflective, Whoever destroys life disregards truth, is sexually irresponsible, takes what is not rightfully theirs, and heedlessly indulges in drugs, destroying the very roots of their own life. Whoever is intent on goodness should know this: a lack of self-restraint is disastrous. Do not allow greed and misconduct to prolong your misery. People are inspired to be generous according to their faith and trust. If we become discontented with what we have been given, our meditation will be filled with endless mental affliction. But if we are free from this discontent, our meditation is full of peace. There is no fire like lust, no obstruction like hatred, no trap like delusion, and no vortex like craving. It is easy to see the faults of others, but it takes courage to look at one's own. As with chaff, one might winnow others' shortcomings while hiding one's own, as a stealthy hunter might conceal himself from his prey. Those who always look for the faults of others, their corruptions increase, and they are far from freedom. No tracks are found in the air. There is no liberation apart from the way. Most people tend to indulge in proliferation, from which awakened ones are free. No tracks are found in the air. There is no liberation apart from the way. There are no conditioned things that are permanent, and yet the Buddhas remain unperturbed. Making an arbitrary decision does not amount to justice. The wise decide the case after considering arguments for and against. By making decisions based on truth and fairness, one safeguards the law and is called righteous. Those who speak much are not necessarily possessed of wisdom. The wise can be seen to be at peace with life and free from all enmity and fear. Though one's knowledge may be limited, if understanding and conduct rightly accord with the way, one is to be considered well versed in Dharma. Having grey hair does not make you an elder. Ripe in years, maybe, but perhaps pointlessly so. One who is truthful, virtuous, impeccable in conduct, free from all stains, and wise, can be called an elder. Those who are envious, stingy, and manipulative remain unappealing despite good looks and eloquent speech. Those who have freed themselves from their faults and arrived at wisdom are attractive indeed. Shaving your head does not make you a renunciate. If you are still full of recklessness and deceit, how could someone possessed by craving and lust be considered a renunciate? You become a monk or nun by letting go of all evil, by renouncing all unwholesomeness, both great and small. You are not a monk or nun because you depend on others for food, but by submitting yourself wholeheartedly to the training of body, speech, and mind. You become a monk or nun by seeing through this world with understanding, by rising above good and bad, and living a life of purity and contemplation. Silence does not denote profundity if you are ignorant and untrained. Like one holding scales, a sage weighs things up, wholesome and unwholesome, and comes to know both the inner and outer worlds. Therefore the sage is called wise. Those who still cause harm to living beings cannot be considered as attained. Those who are attained maintain a harmless demeanour towards all beings. Do not rest contented because you keep all the rules and regulations, nor because you achieve great learning. Do not feel satisfied because you attain meditative absorption, nor because you can dwell in the bliss of solitude. Only when you arrive at the complete eradication of all ignorance and conceit should you be content. The Eightfold Path is the most honourable way, the Four Noble Truths the most honourable utterance, freedom from craving the most honourable state, and the all-seeing Buddha the most honourable being. This is the only way, there is no other, that leads to clear seeing. Follow this way and Mara becomes disoriented. If you walk the path, you will arrive at the end of suffering. Having beheld this myself, I proclaim the way which removes all thorns. The awakened ones can but point the way. We must make the effort ourselves. Those who reflect wisely and enter the path are freed from the fetters of Mara. All conditioned things are impermanent. When we see this with insight, we will tire of this life of suffering. This is the way to purification. All conditioned things are inherently lacking. When we see this with insight, we will tire of this life of suffering. This is the way to purification. All realities are devoid of an abiding self. When we see this with insight, we will tire of this life of suffering. This is the way of purification. If, while still young and strong, you procrastinate when you should act, indulging in heedless fantasies, the way and its wisdom will never become clear. Be careful in what you say, restrained in what you think, and impeccable in how you act. Purifying these 3 ways of behavior will take you along the way of the sages. To contemplate life leads to wisdom. Without contemplation, wisdom wanes. Recognize how wisdom is cultivated and destroyed, and walk the way of increase. Clear away the forests of craving, but do not attack and destroy the trees. Clear the entire forest of craving, and you will see the way to freedom. So long as sexual attraction has not been cleared away, if even the slightest trace remains, the heart is held in dependence, like a suckling calf to a cow. Remove the bonds of attachment, as one might pluck an autumn flower. Walk the way that leads to liberation, explained by the awakened one. It is a fool who indulges in dreaming about the most comfortable place to live, saying, "Here it will be warm, there it will be cool," unaware of impending death. As a flood could sweep away an entire village, those who are caught up in relationships and possessions will be carried away by death. As you approach death, none of your fond attachments will protect you. See this, then with wise restraint and unwavering effort, hasten to clear your path to liberation.